The message came on a Tuesday morning. It filled every screen on Earth simultaneously, in every language at once. The signal was so powerful that it overloaded some broadcasting equipment. Radio stations went silent. Television channels cut to black. For 30 seconds, the entire world held its breath. Then the voice spoke. The voice was not human. It was layered and strange, like multiple beings talking at the same time. The Zirathi Empire, it said, had watched humanity for a long time. They had observed the wars, the cruelty, the constant violence. They had seen humans destroy their own world and kill each other over small differences. The Zirathi had decided that humanity was too dangerous and too primitive to join the peaceful civilizations of the galaxy. The offer was simple. Surrender all weapons. Dissolve all governments. Accept Ziroli rule, and Earth would be spared. Humans would live as subjects under Zirathi authority. They would have food, shelter, and safety. The alternative was destruction. Complete annihilation. Not just of military targets, but of every human being on the planet. The Zirathi fleet was already approaching Earth. Humanity had 30 days to decide. The message ended with the same strange, layered voice repeating a single phrase over and over. Surrender or die. Captain Luke Harris was in the Space Defense Command Center when the message reached Earth. He had been reviewing reports of unusual readings near Jupiter for the past week. The sensors had picked up something big moving through space. Something that didn't match any human technology. Luke had pushed for more investigation, but the government had been slow to react. They said it was probably space debris or a sensor malfunction. Now it was clear that Luke had been right about something wrong in the sky. Luke was 52 years old. He had spent his entire life in the military. He had never married, never had time for a normal life. His only real family was the men and women who served under him. He kept his gray hair short. His face was weathered from years of stress and responsibility. When he heard the Zirathi voice, he did not panic. He did not cry. He simply began to work. Luke had been born and raised to handle crises. His father had been a military officer, and his grandfather before that. The Harris family line was full of soldiers who made hard decisions when the world was falling apart. Luke pulled together every piece of data they had on the incoming threat. He called an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders. The response from governments around the world was mixed. Some nations wanted to surrender immediately. They said that Earth had no chance against an alien civilization with technology so advanced. Surrender meant slavery, but it meant survival. Other nations refused completely. They said that humans had fought for freedom for thousands of years, and they would not give it up now because of fear. The United Nations was in chaos. Old enemies blamed each other for causing this crisis. Some said America's military power had provoked the aliens. Others said that developing nations had not advanced fast enough to defend Earth. Russia, China, Europe, India, Brazil, Africa, and the Middle East all argued about what to do next. The arguments went on for hours. While time slipped away, Luke watched the news from the command center. He saw leaders crying on television. He saw people in the streets, some praying, some rioting, some just holding each other as if physical contact could save them. He understood their fear. He felt it too, but he had been trained not to let fear make his decisions. That night, Luke drove home to his apartment. On the way, he saw families packing cars. He saw businesses closing. He saw people standing outside, looking up at the sky as if they could see the Zirathi ships through the clouds. Earth was already dying, not from alien weapons, but from despair. When he got home, there was a message on his door. It was from his daughter Emma. Luke had not seen Emma in 3 years. He had been too busy with his work. Emma's mother had taken her after the divorce, and Luke had sent money but never really been a father. The message was simple. Emma wanted to see him before the end. Luke drove to his ex-wife's house. The door opened, and there was Emma. She was 10 years old now. Luke remembered holding her as a baby, but then the military had called, and there had been another mission, another crisis. The years had passed. Now this little girl was looking at him with her mother's eyes, and he could see that she was afraid. "Are we going to die?" Emma asked. She was sitting on the couch, small and alone. Luke sat down next to her. He wanted to lie. He wanted to tell her everything would be okay. But that was not what she needed to hear. "I don't know," he said, "but I am going to try to make sure we do not have to die. I am going to try very hard." Emma reached out and held his hand. It was a small hand, soft and warm. Luke felt something break inside him. This was what they were fighting for. Not glory or honor or Earth's place among the stars. They were fighting so that Emma and all the other children could have a future. They were fighting so that humans could choose their own path, instead of having it chosen for them by an alien empire. Luke stayed with Emma and her mother for one more hour. Then he drove back to the command center. He had made a decision. When he arrived, he called a meeting with his senior officers. There were 20 of them in the room, all highly trained, all scared. Luke stood before them and did not show his fear. "The government will take time to decide," Luke told them. "They will argue and debate while the Zirathi fleet gets closer. We do not have time for debate. We need to begin preparing our defenses now. We need to coordinate with every military on Earth. We need to turn our weapons into something that can actually hurt an alien civilization." One of his officers stood up. It was Lieutenant Anna Murphy. She was young, only 35, but brilliant with languages and communications. She had already learned to read Zirathi signals and was trying to understand their language. "Captain," she said, "I have been analyzing the Zirathi message. They are proud. They believe they are completely superior to us. They think we will surrender out of fear. But they also made a mistake. They gave us a threat with a deadline. That means they are not here yet. That means we have time." Luke nodded. "Exactly. And we are going to use that time." He ordered all communication officers to begin working on ways to jam or confuse Zirathi signals. He ordered all engineers to begin looking for ways to improve their weapons. He ordered all soldiers to prepare for war. It was not official yet. The government had not approved it. But Luke was going to be ready whether they approved it or not. One more day passed. Then another. The Zirathi fleet came closer and closer. Satellites tracked their approach. They were still days away, but coming fast. On the 5th day, Luke made a broadcast. He did not ask permission. He simply recorded a message and sent it out on all channels. He spoke directly to humanity. "This is Captain Luke Harris," he said. "I know you are afraid. I am afraid too. But I want you to know that humanity will not surrender. We will not bow to these aliens. We are a species that has survived ice ages and diseases and wars and countless disasters. We are a species that builds and creates and loves and dreams. The Zirathi think we are weak because we value these things instead of power. But they are wrong. We are strongest when we are fighting for what we love." Luke paused. He could feel Emma's hand in his as he spoke. "We will fight. Some of us will die. But we will choose to die free rather than live as slaves. This is who we are. This is what humans do. And I ask every military on Earth, every scientist, every engineer, every person with courage in their heart to join me. Help us defend our world. Help us show the galaxy that you do not provoke humanity and expect to win." When the broadcast ended, something changed on Earth. The arguing stopped. The despair lifted. Governments stopped debating and started preparing. Military forces from every nation began to coordinate. Scientists and engineers worked together for the first time in human history, sharing knowledge and technology. Old enemies became allies. Old rivalries became partnerships. The Zirathi were still confident. They were still sure they would win. But they had made a mistake. They had given humans something to fight for. They had given humans hope. And nothing was more dangerous than humans with hope and nothing left to lose. The Zirathi did not wait for humanity's answer. On the 7th day after their message, they struck. The first attack came without warning. A single Zirathi weapon, fired from their approaching fleet, hit an orbital space station above Earth. The station had been home to 237 people from different nations working together on research and experiments. There was no explosion. The station simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, and the next moment it was dust spreading through space. The world screamed. News channels showed the wreckage. They showed names and faces of the people who had been on that station. They showed families destroying themselves with grief. The Zirathi broadcast another message. This was just a sample of their power. Surrender now, or the attacks would continue until nothing remained of Earth. Captain Luke watched the news from the command center. He had known people on that station. He had made friends who worked in space. He felt the anger rise in his chest like a wave. But he did not let the anger control him. Instead, he used it. They made a mistake, Luke told his team. They showed us their weapons. They showed us how they attack. Anna, what did you see? Lieutenant Murphy was studying the censored data. She had set up a small laboratory in the command center, surrounded by computers and screens showing Zirathi signals. She was good at her job. She noticed things that other people missed. The weapon was powerful, Murphy said, but it had a pattern. It built up energy before firing. There was a charge time of approximately 12 seconds. If we could see that pattern, we could predict when they are going to fire. If we could predict when they are going to fire, we could move targets or try to intercept the weapon. Luke nodded. This was the beginning. This was how they would fight. Not by matching the Zirathi's technology. Not by building bigger weapons. But by understanding the enemy and finding the small mistakes in their systems. He called in Dr. Vincent Price. Vincent had been working on a new kind of propulsion system that was supposed to revolutionize space travel. The project had been mostly theoretical. The government had never really funded it properly because they did not believe it would work. Vincent had been struggling for years to prove his concept was correct. Vincent was a thin man in his 60s with white hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire life trying to be taken seriously as a scientist, and nobody had ever listened to him. Now, in the middle of a war, Luke asked him to weaponize his life's work. I need your quantum drive, Luke told him. Not to go to space. I needed to amplify our weapons. I needed to make our missiles faster and more powerful. Can you do that? Vincent did not hesitate. Yes, he said, but it will be dangerous. The technology is not stable. If anything goes wrong, it could destroy everything within kilometers. I know, Luke said, but if we do nothing, everything will be destroyed anyway. Vincent went to work. He had a team of engineers who had been working with him on the quantum drive project. They were the best and the brightest from different countries. Before the Zirathi threat, they had been competitors. Now they were brothers and sisters in arms. The laboratories were set up in the mountains near Colorado. They worked without sleeping. They made mistakes and fixed them. They tested the quantum drive on missiles and watched as the weapons became faster and more deadly. The first test was a success. A missile that should have traveled 1,000 kilometers now traveled 10,000. A weapon that should have taken 10 minutes to reach its target now took 30 seconds. Meanwhile, Luke was organizing a global defense network. He had contacts in every military on Earth: the United States Air Force, the Russian Strategic Rocket Forces, the Chinese military, the Indian Air Force, the European militaries, the Brazilian military, the Australian military, the Israeli military, the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, the Korean military, and dozens of others. They had been rivals for decades. Now they were working together. The coordination was complex. Every nation had different weapons, different training, different systems. But they found ways to make it work. Soldiers from America worked with soldiers from Russia. Engineers from Japan worked with engineers from Germany. For the first time in human history, the entire world was united in one purpose. Colonel Patricia Blake was the one who organized most of this work. She was a tough woman in her late 40s, with short hair and a face marked by scars from an old car accident. She had made it in the military in a time when women were not welcome in combat roles. She had fought twice as hard as any man to get where she was, and she had no patience for weakness or politics. Patricia brought order to the chaos. She created schedules and systems. She made sure that weapons were placed in the right locations. She coordinated defensive positions across all of Earth's continents. She was brutal and fair, and the soldiers respected her because she never asked them to do anything she would not do herself. 4 days before the Zirathi fleet reached Earth's outer defenses, Lieutenant Murphy came to Luke with important news. "I captured a Zirathi pilot," she said. "His shuttle crashed in the Pacific Ocean. The recovery team pulled him out of the water. He's injured but alive." Luke went to see the alien. It was the first time he had ever come face to face with a Zirathi. The alien's name was Kethis, and he was small. Luke had expected the Zirathi to be large and intimidating, but Kethis was no more than 5 feet tall. He had a thin body covered in what looked like flexible armor. His eyes were large and black, without eyelids. His skin was a pale blue color. Kethis was in a medical room, under guard. He was injured, with bandages covering one of his arms and damage to his chest armor. When Luke entered, Kethis made a sound that might have been laughter. "So the primitives have captured one of us," Kethis said. His voice was high and crackling, nothing like the deep layered voice of the initial message. "You should kill me quickly. The Emperor will hunt you until you are all dead. This is what happens when you oppose the Zirathi Empire." Luke pulled up a chair and sat across from the alien. "Tell me about your empire," he said. "Tell me about the Zirathi civilization." Kethis laughed again. "Why would I tell you anything? You are going to die in a few days. Your entire species will be extinct." "Maybe," Luke said. "But right now, I am the only being in this room who is treating you like a person instead of an animal. I could let you bleed to death. Instead, I had our doctors fix your injuries. I gave you food and water. Why would I do that if you have already lost?" Kethis fell silent. The alien studied Luke with those large black eyes. "Because you are not what I was told you were," Kethis finally said. "They said humans were animals. Dangerous animals, but animals. They said you were too primitive to understand anything beyond violence and survival. And what do you think now?" Luke asked. "I think the Emperor made a mistake," Kethis said. "I think you are more dangerous than the Emperor understands. But you will lose anyway. The Zirathi have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have never lost a war. We have never faced an enemy that could actually hurt us." Luke leaned forward. "Why is that? If you are so advanced, if you have so much better technology, why have you never lost?" Kethis was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. "Because nobody has ever really fought us," he said. "Other civilizations surrender when they see our power. They understand that they cannot win, so they give up. But you keep fighting even though you know you will lose. That is not smart. That is not logical. But it is something we have never seen before. Luke thanked Kethis and left the room. He went back to the command center and found Murphy waiting for him. He gave you information, Murphy said. It was not a question. Yes, Luke said. He told me something important. The Zirathi are not used to real warfare. They are used to intimidation. They expect their enemies to quit. We are not going to quit. 3 days later, the Zirathi fleet appeared on the edge of Earth's orbit. They were big. So very big. The ships looked like mountains made of metal and light. They moved into position and began firing their weapons. Luke's forces were ready. They had placed every missile in strategic locations. They had coordinated with every military on Earth. Dr. Price's quantum-enhanced weapons were loaded and ready. The soldiers and engineers and officers who had worked together for the past few days now stood. Shoulder to shoulder, the first Zirathi weapon came toward Earth. Lieutenant Murphy saw the charge pattern that indicated the incoming attack. The defensive systems responded instantly. A human missile, faster than any missile had ever been, shot upward toward the Zirathi weapon. The two weapons collided in space above Earth. They both exploded. The Zirathi on their ships could not believe what they were seeing. A human weapon had intercepted their attack. It was not possible. They had assumed Earth would be defenseless. They had assumed they would win without any real resistance. But they had assumed wrong. Luke watched from the command center as the first Zirathi ship was hit by one of Dr. Price's quantum missiles. The impact was not large, but it was real. The alien ship's shields flickered. They recovered, but everyone understood what had happened. The Zirathi could be hurt. They could be damaged. They were not invincible. The war had truly begun. The war went on for weeks. The Zirathi pushed forward with their attack, but humanity did not break. Every time a Zirathi weapon was fired, human defenses responded. Every time a Zirathi ship tried to attack, human missiles shot back. The battle became a dance of destruction, and humans were learning the steps faster than anyone had expected. Luke moved his command center from the city to a hidden location deep in the mountains of Colorado. The location was protected by rock and earth and camouflage. Satellites could not see it. Zirathi weapons could not easily reach it. This was where the real war would be, fought and decided. Dr. Price continued his work in the laboratories beneath the mountain. His quantum drive technology was proving to be the key to our survival. Every day, he made improvements. Every day, the missiles became faster and more powerful. He worked with his team of engineers from around the world, and they pushed the technology beyond what anyone thought was possible. Vincent Price was not a young man anymore. The stress of the war was aging him rapidly. His hair was now completely white. He had lost weight from not eating properly. He barely slept. But he kept working. He knew that his technology was the only thing that could give humanity a real chance against the Zirathi. One day, Price discovered something unexpected while studying the Zirathi weapons. He called Luke to his laboratory. "I have found something important," Vincent said. His hands were shaking as he showed Luke the data. "The Zirathi are not as strong as we thought. Look at the biological information I extracted from their ship systems. Their skeletal structure is fragile. Their muscles are weak. They evolved on a low-gravity world. Earth is heavier than their homeworld. That means humans are stronger. We are faster. We have more endurance." Luke looked at the information and felt something shift in his understanding of the war. The Zirathi had advanced technology, but the Zirathi were not physically superior to humans. They were actually physically inferior. They had conquered the galaxy not because they were stronger, but because they had developed better weapons and because their enemies always surrendered before fighting real battles. "How much stronger are we?" Luke asked. "Much stronger," Vincent said. "Humans from Earth were shaped by a harsh world. We evolved to survive cold and hunger and predators. Our bodies are built for survival. The Zirathi bodies are built for comfort. Their civilization is so old and stable that they do not need to be strong. But we do. We always have." Luke called a meeting with his senior officers. There was Colonel Patricia Blake, who had organized the Global Defense Network. There was Sergeant Derek Mitchell, a young soldier who had proven himself in every engagement. There was a woman named Commander Sarah West, who led the Air Defense Forces. There were others, all hardened by weeks of combat, all ready to think in new ways. "The Zirathi are not invincible," Luke told them. "In fact, they are weaker than we are. Not in technology, but in body and spirit. They have never had to fight a real war. They have never had to sacrifice. They have never had to choose between living free or dying with honor. We have done all of those things. Many times. We are better at war than they are." Colonel Blake understood immediately. "We need to change our strategy," she said. "We need to stop trying to match their technology and start using our advantages. We need to get closer. We need to use speed and cunning and sacrifice." Over the next few days, the strategy changed. Instead of only using missiles from a distance, Luke began planning surgical strikes. Small teams would infiltrate Zirathi positions. They would destroy critical systems. They would plant explosives in vulnerable areas. It was dangerous. Many soldiers would die. But it was the way humans had always fought when they were facing a stronger enemy. Sergeant Derek Mitchell was chosen to lead many of these missions. He was young, only 25, but brave in a way that inspired everyone around him. He had no fear of death. He had only a burning desire to protect his family and his world. With his team, Derek conducted night raids on Zirathi installations. He destroyed weapons. He sabotaged supply lines. He became a legend among the soldiers on Earth. Meanwhile, Kethis, the captured Zirathi pilot, was providing valuable information. Luke had treated him well, and Kethis had begun to see things differently. The alien had come to respect Luke and the humans he was leading. "Your emperor was wrong," Kethis told Luke during one of their conversations. He believed that conquest was about power, but it is not. Conquest is about will. It is about wanting something so badly that you are willing to die for it. Your species wants freedom so badly that you will die for it. My species wants comfort so badly that we will surrender for it. That is why you are winning." Luke did not smile at these words, but he understood them. He knew that what Kethis was saying was true. The Zirathi had never encountered a species that valued freedom more than survival. They did not know how to fight enemies who could not be frightened into surrender. After 3 weeks of the new strategy, something shifted on the Zirathi side. There was confusion in their communications. Kethis picked it up immediately. "There is dissension among the Zirathi," he told Luke. "The commanders are arguing with the Supreme Emperor. They are saying that this war is not going as planned. They are saying that humans are more dangerous than they expected. Some of them are calling for retreat." Luke saw an opportunity. He had Kethis send a message to other Zirathi forces, using the communication codes he provided. The message was simple. The Zirathi could still leave. They could go back to their worlds. They did not have to die here on Earth. Many Zirathi soldiers were tired. Many were scared. The message found its way to Zirathi forces across the system. Within days, several Zirathi squadrons simply left. They turned their ships around and headed back toward the Zirathi Empire. The invincible Zirathi forces were breaking apart. The spell of their invincibility was shattering, but the main Zirathi fleet, under the command of Supreme Emperor Galaxis, did not leave. Galaxis was ancient, over 3,000 years old. He had ruled the Zirathi Empire for nearly 1,000 years. He had never accepted defeat. He had never known surrender. And he was not going to accept it now. Galaxis moved his flagship closer to Earth. It was a signal of his determination. He was going to destroy this world himself if he had to. He was going to prove that the Zirathi were still the masters of the galaxy. Luke knew that this was the moment. Everything had been leading to this. The Zirathi Emperor himself was now in range. If they could eliminate Galaxis and his command structure, the entire Zirathi invasion would collapse. He called Sergeant Derek Mitchell into his office. "I need you to do one more thing," Luke said. "I need you to infiltrate the Emperor's flagship and plant explosives on their power systems. It will be the most dangerous mission yet. Many of the soldiers will not come back." Derek did not hesitate. "When do we go?" he asked. "Tomorrow night," Luke said. "You will have 20 soldiers with you. You will go in fast and get out faster. You will plant the explosives, and then you will run. The quantum drive explosion will do the rest." Derek smiled. It was a sad smile, because both men knew what this mission meant. But it was also a determined smile. "We will get it done, sir," Derek said. That night, Luke went home to see Emma. He held her while she slept. He thought about all the children on Earth who were counting on soldiers like Derek to protect them. He thought about the future that might exist if humans won this war. He thought about a galaxy where humans were free and could choose their own path. The next evening, Derek and his 20 soldiers moved toward the Zirathi flagship. They traveled in small, fast ships that the Zirathi sensors barely noticed. They wore camouflage that hid them from detection. They were the best soldiers on Earth, and they were about to become part of history. As they approached the flagship, Derek looked back at Earth below them. He could see the continents and the oceans and the clouds. It was beautiful. It was worth dying for. The infiltration began. The Zirathi flagship was vast. It was a city of metal and light, shaped like a creature with sharp angles and glowing weapons. Inside, thousands of Zirathi worked in chambers designed for their low-gravity physiology. The ship had never been breached. The ship had never been under attack from within. The Zirathi did not think this was possible. Derek and his team moved through the darkness. They used information that Kethis had provided about the ship's layout. They knew where the guards were. They knew where the security systems were. They had spent days planning this one mission. Every detail had been prepared. Every possibility had been considered. The first Zirathi guard they encountered was standing alone in a corridor. Derek's team was trained for this. They moved fast and silent. The guard never had time to sound an alarm. The guard simply fell, knowing nothing of what had happened. But as they went deeper into the ship, the Zirathi realized something was wrong. A sensor began sending out an alert. A guard had missed a check-in. Another alarm started. Then another. "Move faster," Derek told his team. "They know we are here." The soldiers ran through the corridors. They encountered more guards now. There was fighting. One of Derek's soldiers fell, hit by a Zirathi weapon. Then another. The Zirathi weapons were powerful, but they were slow to aim and fire. Human soldiers were faster. Human soldiers were quicker. They moved with the speed that comes from surviving on a harsh world. Derek and 12 remaining soldiers pushed deeper into the ship. The power systems were 3 levels down. They had to get there, plant the explosives, and get out before the Zirathi could evacuate or seal them in. On the second level, they found more resistance. A full squad of Zirathi soldiers was waiting for them, positioned behind barriers and shields. The human soldiers had to choose between going around, which would take time they did not have, or going through, which would be brutal and bloody. Derek made the choice. "Forward," he said. "For Earth, for Emma, for everyone waiting for us." The human soldiers charged. It was not a tactic the Zirathi expected. The aliens expected enemies to take cover and fire at a distance. They did not expect enemies to run directly at them. The Zirathi soldiers began to panic. Their training had never prepared them for this kind of direct assault. The fighting was intense and terrible. More human soldiers fell, but the humans were stronger. The Zirathi bones were fragile. Zirathi muscles could not match human strength. When a human soldier got close to a Zirathi, the Zirathi could not win the fight. The Zirathi could only try to escape or die. Derek's team pushed through and continued running. Now they were at the entrance to the power chamber. The door was locked, protected by security systems that Zirathi had designed, systems they believed no one could break. But humans had been breaking into places since the beginning of time. Humans had been overcoming obstacles and finding ways through barriers since they first climbed down from trees and walked on land. Derek's team did not try to break through the door. They went around it. They went up. They went down. They found a maintenance shaft that Kevis had told them about. Inside the power chamber, Derek could see the heart of the Zirathi ship. It was beautiful and strange, a fusion of technology and something that looked almost alive. The power source glowed with an energy that Derek did not understand, but he understood what he had to do. He understood what his team had come to accomplish. The explosives were small and precise. Dr. Price had designed them himself. They would not simply blow up the power system. They would destabilize it. They would cause a chain reaction that would cascade through the entire ship. The explosion would disable the engines, the weapons, the shields. Everything. Derek was planting the third and final explosive when he heard footsteps behind him. Supreme Emperor Calaxis had come to the power chamber himself. The ancient Zirathi was tall, taller than Derek, and wrapped in armor that gleamed with power. Calaxis had fought in wars that Derek could not imagine. Calaxis had conquered worlds. Calaxis had ruled for 1,000 years, and Calaxis was confused. "Why do you fight?" Calaxis asked. "You are outnumbered. You have no support. You cannot possibly escape from my ship. You will certainly die. Why would you choose death?" Derek finished planting the explosive. He turned to face the Emperor. "Because some things are worth dying for," Derek said. "Because my world is worth dying for. Because the people I love are worth dying for. And because if I do not do this, millions more will die. You gave me a choice. Surrender or die. I choose both. I surrender my life so that my people can be free. That is what humans do." Calaxis stared at the young human soldier. The Emperor did not understand. The Zirathi did not have a concept of choosing death for something bigger than themselves. The Zirathi understood power. The Zirathi understood conquest. The Zirathi understood comfort and dominance. But they did not understand sacrifice. "You are mad," Calaxis said. "Maybe," Derek said. "But we are mad enough to win." Derek activated the explosives. The power system began to destabilize. Alarms started screaming throughout the ship. Derek ran toward the maintenance shaft, but Calaxis moved to block him. For a moment, the young human and the ancient alien faced each other. Derek did not have time to fight. He had to reach the others and get them to the evacuation point. He moved to the side, faster than Calaxis expected, and ran past the Emperor. Behind him, Calaxis did not pursue. The Emperor simply stood there, watching the power system begin to collapse. Unable to accept that his invincible flagship was about to be destroyed by a handful of PRIMITIVs, Derek reached the maintenance shaft and climbed upward. His remaining soldiers were ahead of him. They had fought their way to the docking bays where they had entered the ship. They had a small shuttle waiting, engines running, ready to leave. Derek jumped into the shuttle just as the explosions began. The Zirathi ship shook. Its lights flickered. Its systems began to fail. The shuttle pushed away from the flagship and accelerated toward Earth. Behind them, the Zirathi flagship was dying. The explosions spread through every system, cascading and multiplying. The main weapons went offline. The shields flickered and failed. The engines that had driven the ship through space for thousands of years simply stopped working. The invincible flagship began to fall toward Earth. When the shuttle reached the command center, Derek was the only one of the original team who was still alive. 7 had died in the fighting. 12 had made it to the shuttle. But on the way down, the shuttle had been hit by debris from the dying ship. Derek had given his oxygen to 2 of his soldiers so they could survive. He had been conscious until the very end, giving orders, making sure his people got home. Luke was waiting when Derek arrived. He looked at the young soldier, at the wounds, at the determination still burning in Derek's eyes, even as the light began to fade. "Did we get it?" Derek asked. "Yes," Luke said. "The flagship is falling. The Emperor is falling. The Zirathi are falling." Derek smiled. It was the smile of a soldier who had done his duty. It was the smile of a man who had chosen to die so that others could live. "Good," Derek said. And then he closed his eyes as Derek slipped away. The other soldiers in the command center understood what had happened. Derek Mitchell was a hero. Derek Mitchell had saved Earth. Derek Mitchell had shown the Zirathi what it meant to face humans who would die for freedom above them. The Zirathi flagship crashed into the Pacific Ocean. The impact was enormous. It created a wave that could be seen from space. When the water settled, the flagship was gone. And the Zirathi forces, suddenly without their leader and their command structure, began to surrender. Across the galaxy, the news spread. The Zirathi Empire was not invincible. Humanity had defeated them. Humans had proven themselves to be the equal of any species in the galaxy. But Luke did not celebrate. He went to see Emma. He held his daughter and told her that Derek had made sure she could grow up free. He told her that humans had won not because they were smarter or stronger in body, but because they were willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. Emma asked if Derek was coming home. Luke said no. Derek had gone somewhere very far away, but what he did would be remembered forever. Across Earth, soldiers gathered to honor Derek Mitchell. They honored him for his bravery. They honored him for his sacrifice. They understood that they were all like Derek. They were all willing to die so that others could live. They were all humans, shaped by a harsh world, ready to face any enemy, ready to fight for freedom. 6 months after the death of Emperor Calaxus and the fall of the Zirathi flagship, Earth held a celebration. The war was not completely finished. Some Zirathi forces still fought in distant parts of the solar system. Some strongholds continued to resist. But the main invasion was over. The Zirathi had lost. Humanity had won. The celebration took place in New York City. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered in the plaza in front of the United Nations building. The sky was clear and blue. The sun shone down on the faces of people who had survived something impossible. People held flags and signs. Children played while their parents cried tears of relief and grief. Luke Harris stood before the United Earth Council. The council had been formed 6 months ago, bringing together leaders from every nation who had united to fight the Zirathi. There were no longer separate nations. There was only Earth. There was only humanity. Luke had not slept much in the past 6 months. His face was worn and tired, but his eyes were clear. He had aged 10 years in the time since the first Zirathi message arrived. But he was still standing. He was still leading. He would not rest until Earth was fully secure. "We have won," Luke said to the gathered leaders and the billions of people watching on screens across the world. But we have not won easily. We have won because we were willing to pay a price. We have won because we were willing to die. He paused and looked at the list of names that had been prepared. The list of the dead. Millions of them. Military personnel who had died in combat. Civilians who had been killed by Zirathi weapons. Scientists and engineers who had worked themselves to death to give humanity a chance. We have lost much, Luke continued. We have lost people we loved. We have lost cities. We have lost resources that took us generations to build. But we have kept something that is worth more than all of those things. We have kept our freedom. We have kept our ability to choose our own path. Luke spoke about Derek Mitchell. He spoke about how Derek had given his life so that others could live. He spoke about how Derek represented what humans truly were. Not creatures of comfort or convenience. Not beings who valued safety above all else. But creatures who could face any obstacle, overcome any enemy, and choose to die rather than live as slaves. The crowd was silent. The entire world was silent. People understood that they had been given a second chance. People understood that they had a responsibility to make something good from this victory. After Luke finished speaking, Dr. Vincent Price came forward. Vincent was thinner than he had been before the war. His hair was completely white, but he was smiling. I want to announce something, Vincent said. The technology that we developed during this war, the quantum drive that gave us weapons to fight the Zirathi, has been improved and refined. It is now ready for peaceful use. We will be able to use it to travel between worlds. We will be able to build ships that can reach distant stars. The crowd cheered. Vincent continued speaking. Humanity will now be able to explore space. We will be able to find other species. We will be able to make allies. And we will be able to show the galaxy that Earth is not a world of primitives or savages. Earth is a world of builders and creators and people who value freedom. We will take that message to every star. The celebration continued for hours. There was music and dancing. There was laughter mixed with tears. People celebrated the victory while also mourning the cost. Both things were necessary. Both things were true. That night, Luke went home. He was not living in a command center anymore. He was living in a small apartment in a quiet part of the city. It was not fancy. It was just a place where he could sleep and eat and remember who he was. His daughter Emma was waiting for him. She was 11 years old now. She had grown during the war. She understood things that children should not have to understand. But she also understood that she was alive because of people like Derek Mitchell. She understood that freedom was not free. Luke and Emma sat together on the balcony and looked out at the city. The lights were bright. The city was being rebuilt. Humans were working to fix the damage that the Zirathi weapons had caused. Humans were working to make Earth better than it had been before. Dad, Emma said, will there be more aliens coming? Luke thought about the question. It was a good question. It was the question that every person on Earth was asking. Maybe, Luke said. There are probably other civilizations out in the galaxy. Some of them will probably be curious about Earth and about humans. Some of them might be dangerous. But now we know something that we did not know before. What is that? Emma asked. We know that we can win, Luke said. We know that no matter how powerful an enemy is, no matter how advanced they are, we can defeat them if we are willing to work together and sacrifice. That knowledge is more powerful than any weapon. Emma leaned her head against her father's shoulder. She felt safe. She felt like the future would be okay. Over the next few months, Earth continued to change. The new quantum drive technology was used to build ships that could travel faster than anyone had ever thought possible. The first exploratory ships were launched. Scientists and diplomats were sent out to contact other species. What they discovered surprised everyone. There were many species in the galaxy. Some were peaceful. Some were warlike. But many of them had suffered under Zirathi rule. The Zirathi had conquered them. The Zirathi had forced them into submission. When these species heard that the Zirathi had been defeated, they were amazed. Word spread quickly through the galaxy. Humans had defeated the Zirathi. Humans had stood up to the Empire and won. Species that had suffered began to ask if humans could help them. They wanted to join together with Earth to create a new alliance, an alliance of free species that would stand against tyranny. Luke was asked to be the ambassador to the new Galactic Council. The council would be composed of representatives from hundreds of different species, all working together to make the galaxy a more peaceful and just place. Luke accepted the position. He brought Anna Murphy with him, and Colonel Patricia Blake, and Dr. Vincent Price. Together, they represented humanity at the Galactic Council. They told the story of Earth. They told the story of how humans had united when facing an existential threat. They told the story of how humans have been willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. The Zirathi themselves were now a broken civilization. Their empire had collapsed. Their fleets were scattered. Some Zirathi had joined the new alliance. Some had gone into hiding. Some had died in battles with human forces and with the forces of other species that they had oppressed. One day, Luke received a message from Kethis, the Zirathi pilot he had captured at the beginning of the war. Kethis had survived the war. Kethis had sided with humanity. Now Kethis was working to help other Zirathi understand what had gone wrong with their empire. The message was simple. Kethis wrote, "You taught us something that we had forgotten. You taught us that courage matters more than power. You taught us that a species willing to die for something is stronger than a species that will only live for comfort. The Zirathi lost not because you had better weapons, but because you had better hearts. Thank you for teaching us this lesson." Luke kept the message. He read it often. He showed it to Emma. He told her that even enemies could become teachers if you were willing to listen. A year after the war ended, there was a memorial service for Derek Mitchell. It was held in the same place where the United Nations had been established. Soldiers from every nation on Earth gathered to honor Derek. His name was inscribed on a monument, and his story was added to the history books. The inscription read, "Sergeant Derek Mitchell. He gave his life so that others could be free. He showed that humans are willing to sacrifice everything for those they love. He will be remembered forever." Luke stood before the monument with Emma and Anna Murphy and Dr. Price. They stood in silence for a long time, remembering Derek and all the others who had died so that Earth could be free. Then Luke put his arm around Emma's shoulders. "The Zirathi thought we were primitives," Luke said. "They thought we were weak because we valued love and freedom and family. But those things are not weaknesses. Those are the most powerful forces in the universe. Those are the things that make a species unstoppable." Luke looked up at the stars. Out there, beyond Earth, beyond the solar system, the galaxy was changing. Species that had been enslaved were learning to be free. Species that had been afraid were learning to be brave. And all of them carried the same message that humanity had sent into the cosmos. The Zirathi had made a terrible mistake. They had provoked the one species that was willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. They had challenged the one species that was shaped by a harsh world and ready to face any enemy. They had fought against humans, and humans had won. The future was bright. The stars were waiting, and humanity was ready to claim its place among them. As Luke looked at the monument to Derek Mitchell, he understood that this war had changed everything. Earth was no longer an isolated world of primitives trying to survive on a planet. Earth was now a place of heroes. Earth was now a symbol of hope. Earth was now a reminder to every species in the galaxy that courage and sacrifice and the will to be free were more powerful than any weapon. Any technology, any empire. The Zerathi had chosen the worst possible species to provoke. And now,